This is an internal canister filter, and I'm here to tell you why they suck. Let's do this thing. Hello everyone, this is Bentley, and we were supposed to do mountain filters, and then I couldn't find mine, so I had to order one. So, we're going to talk about the internal canister filter instead. This is a slightly more modern approach to powered filtration. We have hang on the backs, we have canister filters. This is kind of like the weird love child between the two. And it kind of comes with all the negatives and less of the positives. So let's dive into the first one. As should be obvious, when you're dealing with something this tiny, there's not a lot of capacity. Now, when we crack this thing open, right, it's pretty simple. Usually, most of them are like this flue ball here where you've got a couple of trays. I had to wash this thing out. It was pretty disgusting, but you'll have tray, maybe 3 trays. They might be stacked trays. It depends on the design. This isn't the only one out there, right? Okay, there's a lot of different versions. Some of the most effective ones I've seen are literally stacked trays, and you can just keep adding to the stack if you really want to. But here's the thing. Because these trays are so small, we'll pull one out, right? Some of them might be designed like this. There are plenty that are not designed like this, where they're just purely sponge, or maybe they're media, but this has a very small little sponge in it. And you can see just how like thin and relatively coarse this sponge is. And then it has a cartridge finer set of filtration, and this was a carbon embedded piece here. This is how Fluval does theirs. Again, not every unit is exactly like this one, but usually what you'll have is a series of small trays, and they may have physical media or sponge media in them. That's not the important part. Because they're so small, you have a limited biocapacity when compared to something like a larger hang on the back or something big like a canister filter, right? Now granted, because this guy is so small, it takes up less room. However, one of the big negatives is these designs must go in your tank. And because this thing has to go in your tank, it then can, like many other filtration methods we've talked about in the past, sponges, box filters, etc., be this ugly eyesore in your tank if you're going for the perfect aesthetic thing. If you want that, honestly, this is not your filtration choice, period. So it takes up room, and it goes inside the tank. Those are negatives. It has less biocapacity than some of the bigger powered filtration. That's another negative. So why design this, right? Well, the simple answer is, unlike some of those other ones, if you lose power, and power comes back on because this is fully submerged, it kicks back on no problem. Second, because it's small, and because it's rather portable, like a hang on the back, because we have a tray system, maintenance is fast. We're just pulling out trays, we're taking them, we're cleaning the media, maybe replacing the cartridges if we use a cartridge-based system, slapping them back in there, closing the top, done, right? Okay, so Bentley, why is that bad? Why is that bad? That seems good. Many of these, because of their small design, mean that you have to maintenance them quite frequently, especially if you have a heavier bio load. If you're dealing with a heavily planted tank where you're putting in and you have a reasonable amount of fish, you're putting in a reasonable amount of food, you are going to deal with these things clogging up relatively fast. And if you are particularly using the cartridge style systems, maybe you want those fine cartridge pads in there and not other sponge, that adds up. You're going to spend and spend and spend on cartridges. You're going to have to replace your cartridges weekly, maybe every 2 weeks, instead of maybe like once a month like you might do with something, say, like a hang on the back filter, or something like a sponge filter where you can maintenance a lot less, and it can hold a lot for a long period of time. That's a big negative. Now, here's the other thing that, because of its design, right, this one has 2 outlets, right, 2 little jets. It pulls the water in through the sides here and through part of the front. Because of this design, right, these outlets, you have a very narrow, basically, jet of water. Now, this is kind of like what's going to happen in an air-driven, like, uplift tube, or a jet lifter tube, rather, or like a matin filter, right, where you're trying to angle your spray and get a much more refined set of current, which then can create more powerful flow for a less powerful method of filtration. And less powerful, I mean by the raw pump's capability. Because of this more narrow outlet set, you can create a very narrow stream of water, and with a less powerful pump, like in this small little guy here, you're actually creating a reasonably good amount of flow. That's a positive. But because there's a very narrow band of flow, it can cause significantly more dead spots of water movement in your tank. And depending on what you're using, like say you want to use sand, you might not have enough flow to prevent things like cyanobacteria, as an example. There's a couple different things, but basically what I'm saying is you get more powerful flow in a very narrow area, so the surrounding regions get less flow. And if you care about kind of a more uniform flow throughout the entirety of your tank, that's where this really falls down flat. But if you want a really good, powerful jet of flow, and to areas that are a little more calm, or an area that's more calm, then this actually might be positive. I consider it kind of a negative. I like a little bit more broad, uniform flow, but that's a personal taste, right? You might not see it that way, and that's perfectly fine. The final one is this. Compared to other internal tank filtration methods, like air-driven methods, you're still paying a good chunk for one of these. So as some examples, like the Sea Chase Shark is about $50 to $60. The Marineland Magnum internal is nearly $90. And this Fluval, when it was more readily available, was about $60. Now that's for these larger sizes. There are smaller sizes that are cheaper, but again, they then get smaller and smaller biocapacity. So they're really only good for something like a 5 or 10 gallon tank, whereas something like this can work up to about 30 gallons relatively effectively. So now you're paying basically a similar cost to what you're going to pay for a much larger hang-on-the-back filter. For a similar speed of maintenance, and honestly, you're getting more frequent maintenance with this thing than you are with a hang-on-the-back. That seems like a big negative to me. It's not really solving some of the problems of the hang-on-back. So what you're really dealing with in this thing, right, is the fact that it costs about as much as a hang-on-back. A much more limited biocapacity than a hang-on-back. It's harder to kind of hot rod this thing like you could a hang-on-the-back. Hang-on-the-back is a big open area. This is very reliant on the trays. So you would have to get a solution that perfectly fits whatever tray design you are using. And then to top all that off, you're going to have to maintain it significantly more. That's a pretty bad combo of negatives, if you ask me. So, in the end, here's the real deal on why the internal canister filter sucks. Narrow flow output, limited biocapacity, costs about as much as a standard hang-on-the-back filter, very reliant on whatever is in the trays, which is to say it's hard to hot rod it and kind of change it, and you're going to have to do maintenance on it far more frequently than you would with some of your other filtration options out there, especially when you compare it to something like the good old hang-on-the-back. That's why this thing sucks. So, with that being said, I'd love to hear from you down below. Have you used an internal canister filter below? Do you like internal canister filters? I've used them before. I kind of like them, kind of don't like them, and it's basically the same reasons that I put in here. I like that narrow band of flow in very certain situations. I love the fact that when I lose power, I don't necessarily have to reprime it. But other than that, I feel like a hang-on-back is just the same thing with more benefit. So I often find myself, if I'm going to be in that situation, using a hang-on-the-back filter or air-powered filtration. I want to hear from you in the comments down below. Do you like them? Do you hate them? Have you never tried one? Is there one you've been particularly interested in? Let me know down below. We'll be doing the positives of this filter next week, and then we'll get into the Matten filter. I had to order one because I couldn't find mine. I have a kit somewhere. I don't know where it went in my storage. I've been doing a bunch of moving stuff around, and it just like vanished into the nether. So it's probably in a box buried somewhere, but couldn't find it. Couldn't get one here shipped fast enough, so we did this one. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, give it a like, maybe share it with a friend. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, consider subscribing. Maybe ring that little notification bell. That way you don't miss other topics like this where we talk about why your filter sucks, why it's great, all sorts of other tips and tricks. And eventually we'll have another fish room tour here coming relatively soon to start off 2024. Yeah, this is the last video of 2023. Wow. Wow, we're going to be 2024. I hope you all have a fantastic new year and a wonderful start to your 2024. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.